Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. And again, it's a great pleasure to join all of you. Again, thanks to the organizer Arab Emtech conference to invite me to share some information to all of you wherever you are. So welcome to this session. So what I'm going to do in the next 15, 20 minutes is to give you a sense about the opportunities that we see in the Web3 Metaverse space, because obviously this is a very new area that got a lot of people very excited. So do we. And at the same time, there have been some great developments in Hong Kong over the past few months in particular that I'd like to share with you. So without further ado, let's get straight right into it. Now, the first thing to highlight is that much like other jurisdictions, oftentimes the developments of a new segment like this would require the supports and the policy incentives and the direction to give the industry the confidence to move forward. The same applies to Hong Kong. As a matter of fact, at the Hong Kong FinTech Week, during the first day on the 31st of October this year, our Financial Secretary, Mr. Paul Chan, which you see at the bottom of the page, he has made a pretty, I would say, long-awaited announcement about the policy about virtual assets and all the related businesses at the Hong Kong FinTech Week. Now, so this is, as I mentioned, is a long-awaited. So essentially, there are a few key messages being announced. Now, first, Hong Kong, yes, Hong Kong is one of the many cities of China, but because of the one country, two systems, basically in Hong Kong, we have I guess the privilege empowered by the leadership in Beijing to give us the regulatory independence. So even though the cryptocurrencies and virtual assets are banned in mainland, because Hong Kong has always been an open economy with free flow of capital, then Hong Kong is positioned to be the sandbox of China to experiment some of the latest developments, including Web3 and virtual assets. So that's why the policy statement, one of them is to make it clear that even though mainland China banned crypto, but Hong Kong is a legal and regulated business activities. Now, this is the first key message. Now, the second key message is that it's not just about cryptocurrencies, it's about many, many others opportunities, from the tokenization of so-called traditional financial assets. It can be bonds, it can be real estate, it can be private equity, intellectual property. So essentially, we're looking at an enormous opportunity that is amounting to hundreds of trillions. And in contrast, as we often try to put things in perspective, you know, the cryptocurrencies in the form of like Bitcoin, the Ethereum, the Solana, the Cardano of the world, at the moment, we're looking at roughly $1 trillion of market cap. Whereas for the so-called traditional assets, we're talking about hundreds of trillions. So a couple 100x bigger. So that's why for us as a international financial center, we are definitely very much in the mode of embracing innovation of the opportunities given from the tokenization of all these financial assets. Now, another thing that, as you can see from the news clipping here, is about the tokenization of green bonds. So Hong Kong is one of the within fewer than 10 markets/economies around the world that issue green bonds. And of course, since we are definitely would like to be setting the tone and be the role model for doing innovation around tokenization, so our government and regulator have been working very actively to try to launch green bonds in a tokenized form. This is something that would probably you'll probably hear from us in the media in the next few months. Now, another thing that really caught the attention of the media and many industry players is the fact that we are now opening up through consultation for some great ideas to help us better protect the retail investors. Now, so obviously, Hong Kong has always been a hub encouraging virtual assets, but in the past, it has mostly been around the professional investors regime. But after a few years of experience, we feel that we have gained enough experience to open it up further to include the retail investors. But having said that, the regulator of Hong Kong, the SFC, which stands for the Securities and Futures Commission, we have always had this principle of protecting investors, that means 100% of the assets will be ring fence. So that's why I think the recent situation from the FTX, the three arrows a few months ago, that should not happen in Hong Kong, at least in a more, I would say, the normal business circumstance, because the client's assets should be 100% segregated and ring fence from the balance sheets of the operators. So that's why that this is something has been the core principle of our regulator SFC. And because of that, we always put our investors' interest first. So that's why while we are definitely open-minded to open up the participation to the retail, we will also like to get the feedback from the private sector to give us the ideas of how can we open it up and at the same time be able to protect the interests of the retail investors. This is something that's ongoing. We anticipate that roughly in the sort of Q1, latest Q2 timeframe of next year, I think more clear regulations on the retail side should be available. So stay tuned. Now, so in the interest of time, I won't go into details, but fair to say that Hong Kong is very much open-minded and open for business when it comes to the virtual assets domain. Now, I also want to just share the screen caps of some news. So from the top left-hand corner, we got the Financial Secretary of Hong Kong. On the right, the Secretary of Financial Services. The bottom left is myself, and then in the middle is the CEO and founder of, actually executive chairman of Animoca Brands that make a lot of headlines around Metaverse and digital asset rights and so on. Is a big champion in private sector for Hong Kong behind this whole Metaverse Web3 movements. And on the right, you have the president of Animoca Brands, who is now in the US, in which basically the team feels that the Metaverse and Web3 cannot be separated. So Web3 is basically the underlying layer to make the Metaverse possible. So that's why if you followed us, you see quite a lot of thought leaders and a lot of thought leadership content about what we think about how this market will play out going forward. Now, so just to simplify about how we see things. So obviously Web3 is a sexy term, but then in simple layman terms, what does that mean? Now for us, there are three things if we were to summarize it. Now first, on the left, the free flow value. Because obviously there are quite a lot of value that have been locked. So for example, intellectual properties. Well, so how can you monetize that in a more scalable fashion? In the current form, it's difficult. But in the Web3 world, we see great opportunities in that front. So same applies to other more, I'll say, illiquid assets from the mid-tier bonds, the mid-tier real estates, even certain, I would say, the private equity that are typically locked up for a period of time. So we see enormous opportunity in opening up or unlocking the values that I just mentioned. Now, the middle part is about the distribution of income. I'm sure that many of you on this space have been looking at how the so-called little guys, right, the individual artists, can now be able to monetize his or her IP. It can be a piece of art. It can be the song that he or she composes. So there's just a lot of new possibilities in terms of revenue streams for the individuals, the so-called little guys. So this is something we definitely would like to see as well. And then the third bit about the social mobility is, again, as the world is changing at unprecedented pace, we feel that the sort of old jobs, these traditional jobs, could be phased out, right, by the AI, the robotics. But it doesn't mean that there would not be new opportunities, perhaps empowered by Metaverse and Web3. So we definitely would like to see more of that so that more people can access the new opportunities. Now, so that would be more of a macro level from a government's perspective. Now, if we drill down a bit deeper about the use cases, so to speak. Now, we have quite a few examples that I'd like to share with the audience, particularly those who may not be too familiar with Hong Kong. Now, obviously, in Hong Kong, it's a relatively more mature, advanced economy, and we do have quite a lot of brands. From the HSBC, the Standard Chartered banks to the various, let's say, hospitality. So the point I'm trying to make is that many of the so-called mainstream traditional banks, brands, they already feel the need to get closer to the customers, the Gen Z, the millennials, in a way that on a forum or on a media that's more conducive to interactions, i.e. the online sort of gaming platform and the metaverse. So that's why these brands, they have been very progressive minded and forward thinking, that they decided to buy the land, the virtual land on Sandbox. I think many of you might have heard of. It's actually one of the companies invested by Animoca Brands, a great partner and a great stakeholder of ours in Hong Kong. So as these brands bought the land from the Sandbox, obviously at this time, they're still building this out. But actually, it's not just one or two brands. It's a number of collection of brands in Hong Kong that are now occupying what Sandbox call the mega city. So we have this like online metaverse city of Hong Kong that have a number of the really progressive minded brands to try to offer like a completely new user experience for them to engage with their customers. So we are very, very excited to see how this will evolve, and definitely something that as we get more information, we have to share with you in the near future. Now, another aspect that would be quite of interest to some of you is that when we look at Hong Kong, we are quite blessed to be one of the cities around the world that's very high concentration of high net worth individuals. So we get some statistics from various reports, WealthX and then the Arts Market 2022. So basically, the point we're trying to make in this slide is to highlight the fact that Hong Kong, even though we're only a city of a roughly population of between 7 to 7.5 million, we do have a pretty high concentration and a sizable high net worth market. Now, why is this important? And the reason being, Hong Kong is actually the second largest art auction market in the world, just behind New York. So we used to be number 3 behind London, but in the year 2020, we surpassed London to now to be ranked number 2 market in the world. Now, obviously, many of these high net worth individuals, they are very savvy investors and they are very much into alternative investments, including arts. So that's why we have this fertile soil for the arts aficionados. Now, and the relevance for this to the topic today is because there have been quite a lot of media grabbing headlines about the investors in Hong Kong, like paying like big sum of money in buying digital arts, right, through the auction of the Christie's, the Sotheby's of the world. So we are seeing that becoming a very vibrant scene, even for other auction houses like Bonham, and there's just a good number of auction houses already in the digital art space. So this is something that's very exciting. So we can't wait until the next Art Basel in Hong Kong towards the end of March. Now, so this is another use case. Now, another aspect of it is I just want to highlight and bring to attention. When we look at the purchase of virtual land, Metaverse on Sandbox, the digital arts auction via the auction house. Now, there's also the infrastructure layer that we want to point out. Now, one of them is called BSN Spartan, which is an initiative originated from in Beijing. But then after a few years of great traction, because as some of you may know, China has a very high, I would say, strategic value placed on blockchain, all the way up from the leadership of President Xi. Because of that reason, there have been a lot of investments and use cases of blockchain throughout China. So I have to say China is probably one of the leading economies in the world with actual real-life use cases on blockchain. And then they've been sort of fine-tuning the infrastructure, and they launched this BSN infrastructure layer. And then after setting up in Hong Kong as the international headquarters, they are ready to go international. Now, so this is another news clip that in September, actually just 2 months ago, they have launched this non-crypto blockchain. So essentially, you think of it as having the Ethereum build layer or a Polygon layer of infrastructure, but then you only strip out the cryptocurrencies. Let's say Ether. You cannot use Ether to pay the gas fees. But then the reason why this is significant is because when they launch it, when BSN launched it in Hong Kong, they were able to get some very major brands to participate in this POC, including HSBC, the global bank. We got a number of hotel groups. Maxims is the largest food and beverage chain in Hong Kong. And then the Lan Kwai Fong Group. We have a dozen brands, very well-known brands in Hong Kong already on board, because some of these brands are the mainstream brands. They're somehow a bit nervous about cryptocurrencies, but they also see the value of blockchain infrastructure. So that's why this BSN as a non-crypto blockchain has really attracted the mainstream brand's attention. So again, they already started the POC. We look forward to having more use cases and more mature cases that rolled out that we can share with the rest of the world. Now, and then sometimes it can be quite dazzling in terms of all the things happening. So at Invest Hong Kong, we have launched this program called the Global Fast Track. Essentially, what it is a program that matches our corporate champions, some of the big brands you mentioned, as you saw earlier, the HSBC, the Standard Chartered of the world. At the same time, we also brought in a bunch of investors who are very active in fintech investments, the virtual assets, the Web3, the Metaverse investments, to bring them together. And as a result, we are able to offer this infrastructure to connect with the aspiring, the up-and-coming fintech, virtual asset, Web3 firms, so that they can more easily get connected and sell to corporate buyers in case they need some B2B client base to beef up their client lists, or they need to get access to the strategic investors. So in case you're interested, you can scan the QR code and get access to our campaign sites. Now, it's a program not just run by Invest Hong Kong, but we also got the regulators in Hong Kong to come on board to support this. Now, the way that we look at the fintech space, we actually have a number of verticals. So in the interest of today's sharing, I just want to highlight that on the top right-hand corner, you see digital assets. So all the digital asset related sub-verticals will be included. And then in the bottom, you see this CBDC track, which is something that we collaborated with HMA, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, which is the banking regulator and also a de facto central bank. Now, so why I highlighted this is because we also see enormous opportunity because of the fact that I think in case for those of you who may not be familiar about CBDC, so basically the CBDC initiative has been tested with several major central banks around the world, including PBOC of China, of course with UAE, with some of you, and then with Bank of Thailand and Hong Kong. So the four economies have been testing this, multi-market jurisdictions tests of the CBDC, and that worked reasonably well. In fact, in a report published by PwC last year, Hong Kong was ranked as co-1 in terms of the most ready to launch wholesale CBDC between Hong Kong and Thailand as the most ready economies to launch wholesale CBDC. Now, because of that sort of technical readiness, so that was last year from the PwC report. Now, and this year, we want to focus our energy to make sure that we got enough commercial use cases so that we are able to now leapfrog from the technical readiness to commercial readiness. So this initiative is basically a competition that we're able to reach out to many leading players, not just in Hong Kong, but globally, who would like to participate in 8 different development areas, from like retail CBDC, like programmable money, like interoperability, ethics, and so on. So the winners were announced at the FinTech Week in early November. Now, we also, as I just mentioned, we have quite a lot of very progressive-minded corporates. So these are the firms that are ready to work with the fintech firms to essentially undergo the digital transformation to elevate the capabilities. Now, and besides all these corporate clients / champions of ours, we also have onboarded a good number of investors. I think this slide may not be the most up to date. We have actually quite a few more that we need to update these logo sheets. But essentially, we have roughly 40 investors who are quite savvy in fintech, virtual assets, and Web3. That in case you are one of the companies looking for investors, happy to connect you with these guys. We also have a bunch of partners that are basically like law firms, consulting firms, like talent firms, to basically fill the needs of the companies. And last but not least, we have also got some international players that would be helpful to help you to grow to other markets in the region, in Asia, or the rest of the world. The Hong Kong FinTech Week just completed an amazing week in the first week of November. And in the interest for this particular sharing, actually, we have a pretty major focus around the Metaverse, the NFTs, and in fact, that really captured a lot of attention. So again, it's something that we are very proud of the traction we received this year to really jumpstart and lead us to a very exciting 2023, despite the crypto winter. If you are in Hong Kong, you will feel the same energy, particularly starting from the 1st of November, ever since the announcement. Now, this is what I have prepared, and I am just trying to leave some time for the audience in case there's any questions. In the meantime, this is a page with a bunch of QR codes. You can follow us on our website, our LinkedIn, and I'm happy to take some questions because I see that I have about like 5 to 7 minutes left. So with that, I just want to thank again the organizer, Iman, and the team for the kind invitation to share the news with all of you. And any question, I'm happy to answer them at the moment. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Mr. King, for this amazing presentation. I enjoyed it. You know, like it's very important to understand the vision of Hong Kong as one of the leaders in the crypto space, country leaders. I just like ask in the group whether to double check if anyone has a question. Just if you don't mind waiting a couple of minutes until if they have any question to raise it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see what will Hong Kong do further. And one of my dreams to visit Hong Kong.
Yep. Yeah, likewise. But last time I traveled to Dubai, it was 8-10 years ago. I lost track. But then obviously, as I just mentioned, UAE is a very important partner of Hong Kong. Many Hong Kong people travel to like Dubai for business, for example. In fact, I was at a Web3 party last night. At least I can count like half a dozen to 10 people who just came back from Dubai. So definitely
yes,
the two markets are very
agree.
close.
Just like I'm curious to know, like it's my question, if there is kind of partnerships or agreements between countries that will help Web3 investors or Web3 builders to leverage. For example, if I'm from Dubai, from UAE, and I want to invest in Hong Kong in Web3 project, or I want to build, is there any kind of benefits I can get because I'm from this area or other areas?
Well, the short answer is yes. And in fact, we have, well, I'm sure the same thing applies to UAE, to Dubai. Many the economies have quite generous sets of incentives. I'm trying to pull up a deck. If you just bear with me for just like 10 seconds. I'm trying to find the deck where we have like some summary slide. And that slide basically captured a lot of the incentives that we offer. So maybe I can share screen because again, I always believe that a picture tells 1,000 words. So now I think this is not the most up to date, but I just want to give the audience and yourself a sense. So again, there's just so many new schemes, and we have been so busy with the FinTech, so we haven't got a chance to update this yet, but we will do so before end of the year. But as you can see, as someone coming in from other markets such as Dubai, obviously when you set up a company and you have to do perhaps some R&D more on the D side, right, the development side, to the hiring and business development. Obviously, you need to do BD, the marketing expenses that you have to incur, and fundraising. You want to raise the next fund. Obviously, in Dubai, in UAE, there are quite a lot of investment money. So I think it's not the money, it's the smart money that we are able to pair you up with the strategic investors based out of Hong Kong, who have their own connections in like Southeast Asia, North Asia, mainland China, and so on. So we are able to connect you the smart money together with this government money. Because in a way, as you can see, with that like $2 billion sort of sign, this is like a collaboration. It's like a joint investment. So the GP, the VC would invest, and then the Hong Kong government would co-invest. So we have schemes like that. We also have some funding for overseas expansion. Let's just say that a firm from Dubai decides to set up in Hong Kong, and subsequently you want to expand to North Asia, to Japan, for example. We actually have some marketing funding to help you to do marketing in Japan, for example. So yeah, this is just meant to be sort of like illustration of just some of the schemes available. And actually, one of my colleagues did the math, and they add up all these different schemes. Assuming that you go through the process to apply to all of them, you got approved by all of them. Now, even not including the latest schemes, we have some new schemes that came up just in the past month. Put those aside, even for the existing one you see on this page, it adds up to be roughly between 2.5 to 3 million US of basically support subsidies from Hong Kong governments. So it's a decent amount of money to get things started.